As the death toll increases through this Israeli and Palestinian conflict, the State Department has been asked to weigh in and give an official statement on it. And so unfortunately, we're about to hear from its spokesperson who will not commit to an answer condemning the death of Palestinian children and innocent civilians. Let's take a look at the first video where one reporter actually challenges him on the narrative coming from the State Department on this conflict.
They keep saying both sides, when in fact one side had F-35s, they're bombing the Palestinians. In fact, that's the only place on earth where the F-35 has been used in combat. And the others have stones. I mean, what is this both sides thing? One side is occupying and the other side is being occupied. Could you care to explain what is the both sidism here?
Well, most recently we have called on all sides to de-escalate. That includes Hamas. So that has been our message since late last week. It is our message now.
So the US State Department's messaging on Israel overall hasn't really changed. They have put out statements about how Israel has the right to defend itself, even though Israel was the aggressor, dating back to a month ago when they decided to restrict the rights of Palestinians to practice their religion within Israel. They also raided the Al-Aqsa Mosque, not once, but twice. And they also limited the number of Palestinians who can go there to practice their religion. And of course, as we've shared with you, they're also trying to evict Palestinians from their homes in Sheikh Jarrah in Israel as well. And so to both sides, this is absolutely ridiculous. And the real question is, while the United States government believes that Israel has the right to defend itself from any aggressor, including Hamas or any other potential adversary, does the US State Department believe that Palestinians have the right to defend themselves since they're not the ones who started this conflict to begin with?
So that's a great question and one they're about to ask him, and he's going to be stone cold busted. Right, the hypocrisy is going to be through the roof. But even on this, we are asking for caution from both sides, and that's why we blamed Hamas. That didn't sound like both sides. It sounded like you were just blaming one side, the side that didn't start it, okay, and the side that's getting butchered right now. Yeah. That's what it sounded like, because that's what it was, but it's about to get way worse.
So let's go to this next clip, and the real question is, do Palestinians have the right to defend themselves? The question is asked to this US State Department spokesperson, Ned Price.
We're speaking of the principle of self-defense.
I'm asking if you think that the principle of self-defense applies to the retaliatory, the airstrikes that they're conducting in response.
Matt, this is a very fluid situation. I would hesitate to comment on operations beyond the rocket fire that is clearly targeting innocent civilians in Israel. So I would hesitate to speak to specific operations that have just occurred. But the broader principle of self-defense is something we stand by on behalf of Israel and every other country.
Do you think that an Israeli military response to the rockets coming in, a military response to the rockets coming in is covered by this broader rubric of self-defense, right?
Self-defense often does authorize the use of force.
So he's giving a pretty wishy-washy answer there. First, let me just give credit to the reporters asking the questions in the first place, because as long as I've been doing this job, I honestly haven't seen that type of framing in the questions being asked of the US State Department on this particular conflict. So it is fascinating to see how things have changed just a little bit, and that's a positive thing because these difficult questions do need to be asked. But secondly, the narrative regarding aggression by Hamas is skewed in the answer by Ned Price there, because 3 Israeli civilians have died as a result of this conflict. On the Palestinian side, in Gaza, just today, a 13-story residential building collapsed as a result of airstrikes done by the Israeli government. And then there's also the fact that 28 Israelis are dead, 10 of whom were children, 1 was a woman. And so every time this conflict comes up, while the US government would like to do this both sides argument, the truth of the matter is it's an uneven conflict, certainly with military capability and the aggression used.
Yeah, so you're being very generous to Ned Price. Ned Price is basically acting as a spokesperson for Israel, not for the United States of America. If you want to cry about that, you can, but it's super obvious. Here, look at what he said. Hey, if the Israelis have a right to do self-defense, do the Palestinians have one too? Because you said it was a broad principle. You heard him say it on the tape. It's a broad principle. If you're struck, you can do self-defense. Well, it's a fluid situation. So you're asking me to comment on the Palestinian casualties. I won't comment on them because what are they, human? They're not human, right? So it's the broad principle apparently does not apply to them. It only applies to the Israelis. And you said it was a fluid situation, but then you told us Hamas did the attacks did the rocket fire on Israel. Wait, I thought you said it was fluid and you didn't know the facts on the ground. But you know Israel struck Hamas. So how is one side fluid and the other side isn't fluid? Or perhaps you're a liar purposely defending your so-called ally, no matter what the facts are. The idea that America is neutral in this is hilarious. Let's stop the fiction. Reporters, that was amazing. There's more, okay? But can you guys also ask them, are you guys still pretending to be neutral? It's obvious that you lie on behalf of the Israeli government every single time. Fluid my ass. And you have now had a chance, Ned Price. Have you come back out and said, yes, good point by them. Broad principle, just like I stated, of self-defense. The Palestinians have a right to self-defense, as that's why they fired the missiles into Israel after they were attacked. No, you didn't say that. You would never say that. You would, and look, I get it. You would never say Hamas has a right to defend itself by firing missiles. But you say every time Israel has a right to murder their kids, self-defense, self-defense, self-defense. So why uneven? Look, if you're in the rest of the world, you're wondering why I'm harping on this, when I'm saying the most obvious thing in the world. That's because you don't live in America. In America, there's this like literal insanity where everybody's like, no, facts don't need to apply and logic doesn't need to apply. Israel, golden and always right. Palestinians lower than dirt and don't count as human beings. I know you can't believe it, right? You can't. No, that's the assumption of almost everyone in power here in America.
So let me just say that Ned Price is simply carrying out the beliefs of the commander-in-chief, because Joe Biden, as someone who's had a long-standing political career, has certainly weighed in on this conflict between Israel and Palestine. There's no question. In fact, let me give you some specifics. Believe it or not, back in 2001, the Bush administration had a little pushback for Israel. So in 2001, when the Bush administration criticized Israel's policy of assassinating suspected Palestinian militants, Biden disagreed with that criticism. He was actually to the right of the Bush administration on this. He said, quote, "My view has always been that disagreements between Israel and the United States, those differences should be aired privately, not publicly."
Like, in other words, how dare George W. Bush, the warmonger Republican, criticize our beloved Israel? I'm gonna go to the right of him. That's who Joe Biden is. You think Joe Biden's gonna be fair to the Palestinians? All this progressive happy talk in Washington. Oh, he's the next FDR. He's the next LBJ. No. Who are you guys kidding? Who are you kidding? No, he's gonna privately encourage Netanyahu, his friend, who he loves. Netanyahu is a tyrant. When Trump said the tyrants were the terrible tyrants were his friends, like Kim Jong-un, everybody was like, oh, I can't believe, and Mohammed bin Salman, oh, Trump is such a bad guy, and he was. Biden says the tyrant Netanyahu, killing kids right in front of our eyes, who's clearly started this conflict, is a wonderful, beloved guy. Oh, hey, Biden, humanitarian, let's give him a Nobel Peace Prize.
Let me
get out of here. Hey, look, the powerful in this country are giant hypocrites. And I want to, sorry, Anna, one more thing. This isn't just about Israel. It's the powerful versus the powerless. It happens in every context. Trayvon Martin, every right winger in this country said that George Zimmerman had a right to defend himself because Trayvon Martin, a 17-year-old kid, might have hit him. He didn't, but they say, oh, he might have hit him. So Zimmerman had the right to defend himself by murdering the kid with a gun. When I asked the right winger on this show, I said, well, did Trayvon have a right to defend himself? Zimmerman had the gun and pursued him. Did Trayvon have a right to defend himself? No. The powerless don't ever have a right to defend themselves. Only the powerful do, according to the right wing which only cares about the powerful, and generally speaking, the US media, which thinks the powerful are the beloved and the powerless are the people you have to crush. Again, exception of those two wonderful reporters you saw in that video.
There is a few more videos I want to get to, including this next one where the deaths of children is brought up, and Ned Price is asked specifically whether or not he condemns those deaths. Let's watch.
Talk about what you said about the principle of self-defense. Does that in any way apply to the Palestinians? Do they have a right to self-defense? Do Palestinians have a right to self-defense?
In broadly speaking, Saeed, we believe in the concept of self-defense. We believe it applies to any state. I don't think that. I certainly wouldn't want my words to be construed as.
I understand. I want to ask you, I don't want to harp on this either, but the Israelis killed 13 people just now, including maybe 5 or 6 children. Do you condemn that? Do you condemn the killing of children?
Saeed,
I'm asking you, do you condemn the killing of Palestinian children?
Obviously, and these reports are just emerging, and I understand, I was just speaking to the team, I understand we don't have independent confirmation of facts on the ground yet, so I'm very hesitant to get into reports that are just emerging. Obviously, the deaths of civilians, be they Israeli or Palestinians, are something we would take very seriously.
Okay.
No, but why? No, hold on, Jake. Give me 1 minute, please. Okay. Why don't you just condemn the killing of children? Period. I condemn the killing of children. Why can't they do that? Why is it so controversial, even in this context, to just say that it is worth condemning the death of children as a result of this ridiculous conflict? Why is that a hard thing to say? They're so afraid to say anything that might upset Benjamin Netanyahu, which drives me crazy.
Look, I don't know why.
It's the easiest thing in the world to condemn the death of children, but he can't even get himself to do that. They're so terrified of Netanyahu. Someone who, by the way, we have not only provided the Iron Dome for, but we have also increased military spending for, increased US foreign aid toward. Our taxpayer money is being used to fund the murders that we're seeing on these videos right now. That's what we're doing as a country. And Biden's foreign policy across the board, not just in regard to this conflict, has been complete and utter dog crap. It just has. Already talking about, recognizing Juan Guaido as the leader of Venezuela, someone who wasn't democratically elected, just a US puppet, just wanting to install whatever US puppet we want in Latin American countries. You brought up Mohammed bin Salman earlier, Cenk. I mean, Biden is like, oh, Trump is awful for not wanting to hold Mohammed bin Salman accountable. We are going to do a study to make sure that he's the one who did this to Jamal Khashoggi, and then there's gonna be consequences. And you know what happened after that study came out that confirmed that MBS ordered the murder and dismemberment of Jamal Khashoggi? Nothing. Biden didn't want to do a damn thing about it. The foreign policy coming from the Biden administration is more of the same, absolute dog crap.
My favorite part of that video was when Ned Price looked like he was outraged at the suggestion. He's like, the reporter asked him, do you condemn the killing of Palestinian children? And he's like, oh, Saeed. And then he goes, no, basically, no, I don't condemn it. I'm gonna talk out of both sides of my mouth, and I'm only gonna acknowledge what the Palestinians have done, even though there's, according to him, fluid reporting on what's happening, but the Palestinians are definitely guilty. But the Israelis, I won't ever acknowledge their guilt. Okay, guys, let's just be done with it. You all know it. America is a racist country, and there are leaders, including Joe Biden, is racist. And you could say, oh, well, he's not racist against black people. One could argue about that. But against Muslims, Joe Biden is deeply bigoted. And against Palestinians specifically, he's horrifically racist. The idea that a Palestinian life would be equal to an Israeli life, Joe Biden would never, look, he certainly would never admit that, but much more importantly, he would never act that way. He would never act like they're equal. If an Israeli citizen gets killed, he's understandably outraged, and I'm outraged. If a Palestinian civilian is killed, I'm equally outraged. He doesn't give a damn at all and will never do anything about it. Anyone pretending otherwise, honestly, you're a fool. And I don't know why you're a fool, but you're still holding on to the prayer that Joe Biden is going to be a progressive and hold his friend, the tyrant Netanyahu, accountable. He didn't hold Mohammed bin Salman accountable. And the guy's a butcher, okay? The only thing that matters to, yes, corporate Democrats as well as corporate Republicans is power, 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 power. And yes, if you don't think that the AIPAC and the lobby here in America has influence on American politicians, you're a moron and should retire from reporting immediately and go be a plumber because you don't know how to do your job. Oh no, PAC money. What name so? PAC money affects politicians. I just had Nina Turner on the show. Her opponent, a corporate corrupt Democrat, is signaling to Israeli PACs to go attack Nina Turner on an issue that doesn't have anything to do with Israel. She's basically saying, come spend millions of dollars against my opponent, and wink, wink, when I win, I will be, by the way, an African-American Democrat who will then support Israel no matter what. But you gotta spend the money now. The corruption is so obvious. Yet every reporter's like, what, other than Ryan Grimm, who wrote the story in The Intercept, every reporter's like, what corruption? No, if you say money, Saudi money, Israeli lobbyist money affects American politicians when they ask for and get millions of dollars, you say, oh, that's outrageously anti-Semitic. Well, okay, how about Saudi money? How about Saudi money? That's also anti-Semitic. Now, come on, guys, you aren't reporters. Just shut up, go be a plumber. You're not reporters unless you're telling the truth about both sides here. And so those two that ask those great questions, they're awesome. Ned Price, go work for Israel, because look, but to be fair to Ned Price, he's just doing what his boss tells him.
That's exactly right. He's a spokesperson for the US State Department. This is the US State Department's position.
Yes, and to be fair, that he would kowtow to the Saudis just as well. He would grovel on the floor. Not quite as much because they're Muslims. So he'd say, I mean, we have to protect them even though they're awful and they butcher people, Muslims, terrible. But we're not gonna do anything about it because they have money, okay? And there are allies. Okay, no, PAC money doesn't matter, the lobbyists don't matter. Every reporter in Washington, except those two, and Ryan, seriously, I'm not kidding, about a handful. Every other one sucks at their job, sucks. Scarborough's out there defending the Israelis. Of course, MSNBC, the home of warmongers. Brian Williams talking about beautiful bombs. Scarborough cheerleading the massacre of Palestinians. That's the Washington's idea of a left-wing channel. Hilarious, but I'm sure that Rachel and everybody else is gonna tear in to the US government supporting the right-wing tyrants of Israel. Oh no, it's a Democratic government. You have to kiss their ass, right? The left-wing channel on television. You guys are a joke. By the way, I got more.
No. How about you? Let's take a break because we got to, and we'll be back. And Cenk's on fire. Okay, I feel like we're both demonstrating like the aggression today on the show. Like you're the Israeli aggression, I'm the Palestinian aggression.
I know, I hate that analogy.
No, I know. I'm just kidding, obviously.
But I'm going to say one last thing, guys. I know I can't help it.
I know.
If it was the Palestinians who were powerful and they were crushing the Israelis, then I would be on the Israeli side and say, why the hell aren't we doing anything about the Palestinian aggression? How many Israeli kids do they have to murder before we do something? But nope, doesn't matter. No, and I guess my deep frustration is I thought facts and logic mattered, and I thought humanity mattered. And of course, at this late date, I realize that's a joke for the US government. And it's a joke for the reporters who kiss the ass of the powerful to actually call out obvious facts on the ground. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.